Welcome back to the book discussion, Salt to the Sea. We're starting on page 101 with this video, and we're going to go to 117. There's a lot that happens. There's a lot of writing in here, and especially we're going to look at the themes and symbols that we see on these pages. So while it might be a quick read the first time you read through it, go back a second time, and then we're going to pay attention to the writer's craft. And we're always thinking about the setting. How is this setting different than the one before? So the last video, we were talking about being at the Junker mansion and spending the night and what they found and how the group stayed together. And the next morning, they were going back out and they were heading on their travels. So they're walking to the path to the registration point. The main goal is to get to the city of Frauenburg. And so what happened is, as German government occupied different parts of Europe, they changed the city names to a more German sounding name. So that's why we go from Frauenburg to Frauenburg. And Alfred hasn't changed where he is. He's still at the docks. He's still working on the ship, preparing it for the evacuees. All right. And so if we look at a map, it's always good to think about, especially this because it is a factual as far as this evacuation of movement of people. And so we have what's now in the Soviet Union. We see the Vistula Lagoon, okay, in the Gulf of Gdansk. And you see where there's a red dot underneath the ship. And that's where they're heading to. So this is a lagoon, and it will freeze. It is so cold there that this will freeze overnight, and then people can cross on it. Similar to they do in a lot of the northern, northeast European countries, a lot of ice skating, right? They're able to cross the canals. They're able to skate it, get across. They can take carts across. This is not unusual. And so, especially at night, right? So it's either good first thing in the morning to try and cross because that's when it will be the coldest. But this is where the people are heading. And they're getting to the Gulf. And from the Gulf, the idea is they will go into the Baltic Sea and cross over into German lands. So this is what we're looking at. And you can see in the white corner of the map where you see where they're in the northeast corner of Poland. And then they're going to be going the Baltic Sea, and they'll be heading west into German-occupied land. This is the Frauenburg Cathedral today. All right, so a very old town. You can see it has a medieval influence in here. So these are cities that they're traveling to, territories they're traveling to that are well established, that the people, the cultures there go back for a long time. So let's look at Joanna on page 101. And right, she starts with, where had they all come from? This endless stream of humanity. So think of a stream, right? Just stream of water out of the faucet, just keeps going. This is clogging the small field road. So the road is almost like a creek bank or a river bank, and then the people are like the river trying to go through. And there's just so many that you can't move around. And then you have the forest on either side of this field road. And then she says, had they been waiting in the forest as well? Like, do these other people have the same kind of story? All of these people along this road are on this road for the same purpose. And I think that's what the author is wanting us to do, is think about, it's not just a small group of people trying to evacuate. We're talking about tens of thousands of people evacuating as the Soviet army presses in, right? Young women, elderly grandparents, too many children. Why? Why are those the three groups that she talks about? What event has caused all of these evacuees to be young women, elderly people, and especially says elderly grandparents, and too many children, right? Because all of the men have been called up to war. All of the men have been taken into war. All of so many people that haven't survived, that were taken to work camps, concentration camps. And then on this page 101, we really get an idea of how cold it is. The author is showing us why that lagoon is going to freeze over. Look at the adjectives that she uses. And the adjectives that are used to describe how the people feel as they're walking along this field road, and everybody and they're anxious to get there. They're in a rush to get where they're going, right? Please, Magnus, hurry, coaxed the little boy. He slapped the ox and trotted away. A few carts with well-rested horses clucked by us quickly. They're going, come on, horse, right? Get along. And then it's a prominent family name. So we're seeing that, some of these people were wealthier people, not people just hiding out maybe with scraps. Some people were tired, despondent. Others panicked and full of terror. Right? And then she goes on to show us the kind of terror. It gives us an example of this old man so upset because they shot his cow. Like he can't. They're showing us, like, we're going to give you this one person as an example. Here's another person, all very different, but if we put it together, it's the sum of what everyone's experiencing. And then Eva, lumbering, showing us again she's so big, right? Badgering people. Which way did you come from? What have you heard? And so she's anxious. Why is she anxious? She's left her husband, right? Her husband has said, Eva, you must go. And so even though Eva seems like this brusque, cold person, she's not worried about herself, right? We see the theme of family. She's worried about her husband, what's been left behind. Right. If we go on to 102, the next page in Joanna, we see she says, she's speaking with a woman, our poor Lietuva. Lietuva, Lietuva, that is the Lithuanian name for Lithuania. So that is, she's saying, our poor country. We shall never see her again. And then Joanna's like, what does she mean we're not going to, the war's going to be over, we'll go home. So what does this woman mean, we're not going to see our country? And she calls it by its common name that the common people of Lithuania would know it for, not the people in Europe would know it as. Right? And then we have the wandering boy and the shoe poet talking about shoe types, about how your shoe identifies you again, similar to a fingerprint. Right? And then Joanna and says that Ingrid smells the coast. How many of you have ever taken a trip to the coastline and you can tell when you're getting near the beach, to the salt air? Not so much if you're going to a lake, but if you're going to where there's seawater, you can smell the salt in the air. You can smell the difference and the change of it. Right? And then Florian says we should try to reach the ice tonight. And he says, why? Because the Russians won't be able to see us. We'll be open targets during the day, sort of like we are now. And here's a little bit of foreshadowing. And then he goes on to explain the ice will be stronger at night when it's colder. And he says, look at all these people with the carts, and think of everything we just read about, everyone taking all of their things with them. And he says, when they march across that ice, it's going to weaken. There's too much baggage. And what baggage? Is he talking about the literal baggage, the items that they're carrying? Or is he also talking about the weight, the metaphor of baggage, that the people are carrying their memories, their survival, their homes with them in their hearts and their souls? And again, some foreshadowing. And Joanna takes up for the people, saying it's all they have left, just like that pack of yours. And so we're being reminded that Florian has this pack. We don't know anything about it. And so this is that mystery that's in the story. Like, what is he carrying? What is so important about this pack? What does it have to do with him? And they continue on. And then Joanna says that her papers say resettler. So in this time, you had to have identification papers. If you didn't have identification papers, you would just be hauled off and taken to a camp. And so He says, our papers determined our fate. Remember, fate is a key theme in this book. And then there's this flashback to little Amelia, and she's waving at them like, she doesn't see how fate is so much part of her. She's just living in the moment, right? It says, and then those last words, Amelia had no papers. No papers, no future. So now we're left to wonder, this is a problem. How will the group solve the problem? Will the group solve the problem? Will the problem be the end of Amelia? And so as we read on with the chapter Amelia, the 105, right? She's watching from the cart as it goes along the road and says Florian wanted to tell her things. She hoped he would tell her things. And so she's very observant and a very good observer of people, right? This is a quality that she has. And then she says, but he would not. And so she sees that tension between him. And then she has memory, and that memory of the blackberry jam that Florian shared with her. And then that brings her memory of her father, right? That's a good memory, of hugs and smiles. And then she contrasts that with the memory of what happened in East Prussia. No hugs, no smiles. And then everything's very matter of fact, right? And she talks about being tiny and small with her dad. And then when she's at East Prussia, it's just facts. Stables, cowsheds, piggery, chicken house, coal cellar. Just very factual. Not a lot of details there. And then she talks about her stomach, how it used to feel like a butterfly flapping, but now she feels a bumping against her palm. And it grew stronger. So what is this bumping that's going against her hand? Right? And Florian on page 107, again with the clogging. The road clogged as we neared Frauenburg. Up on a hill sat a red brick cathedral. So this would be the cathedral that people would see as they're in that road. You can see how forested it is now. You can imagine how forested it would have been back in the 1940s, 1945. I shifted my pack. Another test. I would have to register. All right, so again, that pack is coming up. The pack is very important. We've just had little bits about it, and now it's becoming a central part of the story. And he has a memory. He goes back to a conversation with his father, right? And about being a traitor, and being a traitor to not to his nation, his country of East Prussia, but to his soul. And so what is Florian's soul? Who is he a traitor to? Right? A traitor to your soul. What does that mean? And so on the next page, on 108, says, now I risked everything, confronting fate and the knowledge I had authored my own demise. Right? So that word is very important, that the author chooses author, because we're going to find out why that word is used and not another word coming up. So again, a little bit of foreshadowing here. This is also showing you that he has willpower. He has agency. He made a decision, and that decision has brought him to the point that he's at now. Right? And then as they're walking, he comes across a soldier, and the soldier responds to him, Herr Beck, Mr. Sir. Right? So the soldier is giving him a lot of respect. Now, Florian is not in a military uniform. He's in civilian clothes. So what is on his papers that demands such respect from the soldier? Right? And then he's asked twice about traveling with the group. And so Florian has to make a decision here. Is he going to focus on self and saving himself? Or is he going to think of saving the community that he's with? And he feels or sees a shoe poet looking at his boot. And the soldier asks again. And then all of a sudden he's saved from answering because a searing buzz of aircraft echoed from above. And always pay attention to the last sentences. A cluster, tight group of human beings behind us exploded with a bomb. Right? Just behind them. Plane drops bomb on people behind them. Again, there's fate. Had they been a little bit slower, that could have been them being bombed. All right. So as we go on to Joanna on 110, and so she's telling us what's happening with the people. And a lot of people will say that it almost feels like it's happening in slow motion at the same time that it's happening in super fast time. That you can almost replay everything like a slide on a movie still. And so Joanna mentions that the soldiers show great respect for Florian. And we all see Joanna has to, again, fight with herself. She is trained to help people. And here she's not able to go help the people, right? So guilt. Go back to the beginning of the book. What is hunting Joanna? Right? And then she thinks back again, memory. Because the shoe poet says you must preserve yourself in order to help others. Similar to when you're on an airplane, they say grown-ups put the oxygen mask on yourself before you help others, right? You have to take care of yourself in order to be able to help others. And we understand that. But Joanna says, he only knows part of the story. He doesn't understand she left Lithuania and her family. She left them behind to die, and she's having to do this again with this group of people. So again, guilt is hunting her. It hunts her for her family. It hunts her for the people on the road that she can't go back. Right? And then we get to Dear Alfred, right? And he's getting ready, and we also find out, first of all, the author tells us it's an enormous vessel, the Wilhelm Gustloff, because it's just too much for Alfred to walk the length of the ship. And then he says, I found it preferable to conserve my energy. Sometimes this conservation involves stealing away to the lavatory to sit for an hour. So he's hiding in a bathroom, maybe two. On occasion, I remind myself fitness was important to a healthy physique. And then this rash, and we keep hearing about this rash. And a little bit of background here, if you're not familiar, lots of times our immune system, our body tells on us. And so when we are stressed, some people break out with acne. Some people can break out with psoriasis or eczema. And it's a stress reaction in our body. We don't have the self-control to change anything else in our fate, right? At that time, so our body's trying to do something. It's almost like our body's crying out, help me, help me. And I would imagine that's what this rash is, like hives or welts. Eczema, you could get blisters that raise up. It's not contagious. It's only bothersome to the people that have it. It happens to a lot of people. And so I'd imagine that's the rash that he has. Right? So even though he's acting like he's cool, he's in charge, he is in charge of his own fate. He captains his own ship, as it were. The author is telling us by him having this rash that no, he's falling apart. Okay? And then he looks at the dance floor, tries to imagine it with spongy mats, has a thought back to Hannelore, and then again, we are told she's a weakness of his, and we have to wonder our weakness in what way. And then we're saying, remember, fear is his hunter. So he fears Hannelore might be dancing for someone else. All right, next was Amelia, and we see that she has envy of Joanna because Joanna is trusted and wanted, which tells us that Amelia feels the opposite. She doesn't feel trusted. She doesn't feel wanted. Right? And so Amelia says, per aspera en astra. And that is Latin, right? Through hardship to the stars. Is a Latin phrase that her father used. So again, she's having flashbacks to her father memory. And she says, where is her dad now? Could he have realized that things were going to get as difficult as they are? So Copernicus, if you haven't studied the science revolution yet, very famous Polish scientist, where he images of him, he is the first person to write about the solar system being heliocentric, being sun-centered. So that's what these images are. And he's the first one to write the fact that the Earth revolves around the sun. Prior to Copernicus, it was the idea that the sun revolved around the Earth, and it was a geocentric universe. And so Copernicus is the start of that thinking, right? And so you're saying, the stars are beautiful, right? And so she ends up getting an identity card. So again, we see the theme of fate, right? It was fate that the group that we're reading about, no one was injured in those airplanes that were bombing the people on the road in the daytime. It's also fate that killed somebody who was Latvian that had an age close to Amelia's, and they were able to give her the identity card. So now Amelia has an identity card. Was another key thing that we find out about Amelia at this point, right? So now they have a solution. And then again, we go to birds. And so with Amelia, we get the symbol of birds. Quite often we have the symbol of storks, but not here, right? And so remember, Amelia has shame. Shame is a hunter. And so we see again, I think, in these pages 100, 117, we see the original ideas of what is hunting these people: fear, shame, guilt, right? We see it again in this moment as they're nearing the checkpoint, as they're on the road. So looking at Florian, we're getting some clues. So pages 116 to 117, we're getting some clues about Florian here. And we see, I held the paper, waiting to approach the checkpoint. I stared at the type. Gonderausweis. Sorry, I did not speak German. It means special pass. There's a lot of foreshadowing here. Perhaps my best work ever, and this is Florian speaking. The soldier on the road didn't question it. My attitude had to match the level of the forgery. He's saying this is his best forgery ever, so he has to have a very strong and confident attitude, right? That's that agency. I'm going to take charge of my life. This is also the theme of self. He's doing this for himself. And so we're getting some clues on this page about maybe what's in his pack and what could happen if he's found with what he has in his pack. We get some memory with him, right? And he talks about crossing, and again, he's referred to as Herr Beck, a sign of respect, lowers his voice. He's told he can cross in the morning, and then again at the end, when he responds, Hi Hitler, he says, swallowing the bile that rose when I spoke the phrase. Have you ever felt nauseous on your stomach? You get that terrible taste in your mouth? Okay, that's that bile, that bitter digestive juices, right? And so think about the theme of community. Which community is Florian thinking of? Even though he's writing in German, he worked for the German government, Dr. Lang. The Hitler soldiers respect him, right? He responds in German, Heil Hitler, right? So which community is he aligning with? Is he aligning with his community of family as an East Prussian? Is he focused on himself, or is he still aligned with the Nazi party, the Nazi community? All right, so we're going to end there, and then the next we will pick up with Joanna.